Good afternoon. My name is Scott Beckstead. I'm the Senior Oregon Director and the Western Regional Director for the Humane Society of the United States. Here today, very pleased to be joined by a strong coalition of groups in support of Senate Bill 913. This is a bill that will crack down on the black market trade in ivory and rhino horn here in Oregon. The bill is aimed at making sure that Oregon does its part to address the global poaching crisis that is driving some of our most iconic wild species to extinction. So you're going to be hearing from a group of individuals who represent organizations that feel very strongly about wildlife conservation, and of course we'll be happy to take any of your questions. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the state lawmaker who has really taken the lead in championing this bill, Senator Mark Hass. Come forward, Senator. And I will tell you that this is not the first time that Senator Hass has taken a strong leadership role in issues like this. In 2009, he championed a bill to restrict the unlicensed possession of wild and dangerous exotic pets. So wildlife is something that I know the Senator feels very strongly about. So without any further delay, Senator Mark Hass.
Thank you. This bill prohibits the sale of ivory in Oregon while maintaining exemptions for antique and educational collections. Ivory trafficking is an international crisis that directly contributes to the decline of rhinos, hippopotamus, and elephants. Approximately 25,000 elephants are illegally poached annually. At this rate, elephants are projected to be extinct by 2050. So, how does this relate to us in Oregon? Well, here in Oregon, we have a long tradition of advancing animal welfare, and we have a culture that has actively been involved in protecting wildlife anywhere. Oregonians have supported our efforts in the past to ban the cruel practice of horse tripping, to outlaw puppy mills, and, as Scott mentioned, the ownership of exotic pets. Now it's time to extend Oregon's conservation spirit to the majestic creatures of Asia and Africa. With this bill, Oregon will do its part to preserve all wildlife for generations to come. We have some technical experts coming up behind me here from Wildlife Federation and others who can speak at length on this practice of trafficking in ivory.
Thank you, Senator. I would now like to introduce David Shepherdson from the Oregon Zoo. David.
Thanks, Scott. And thanks for inviting the Oregon Zoo to support this bill, something we feel very strongly about. Oregon's had a special connection with elephants for more than half a century, going back to the birth of Paki at the zoo in 1962. And the Oregon Zoo has been supporting conservation across elephant range countries for decades. In 2013, we joined with the Wildlife Conservation Society in their 96 elephant campaign to end the trade in the illegal trade in elephant tusks. The statistics are quite stunning. In 1980, there were approximately 1.2 million African elephants. By 2012, that number had been reduced by almost a third to 420,000. About 35,000 elephants are killed every year. That's one elephant every 15 minutes, if you can imagine that. At this rate, they'll vanish from most of their range, probably within the next 20 years. Elephants are killed primarily so that their tusks can be turned into ornamental objects, jewelry, trinkets, things like that. This provides huge profits for international organizations, international crime and terrorism organizations. Al-Shabaab is one of the organizations that profits from this activity. Asian countries are often blamed for driving the poaching of elephants, but the United States is a major contributor to this trade. Some say that the US is the second largest market for illegal ivory. In California in 2014, a study showed that about 50% of the ivory being sold was illegal under federal law. I think this clearly demonstrates that the legal ivory market in states is providing a cover for the illegal trade in ivory. We believe that bringing an end to the sale of ivory will help bring an end to the illegal killing of elephants. Let's join New York and New Jersey in banning the trade of ivory within this state also. Humans can survive without ivory, elephants can't. Thanks.
Thank you, David. I would now like to introduce Ms. Natasha Dolezal from the Kenya Legal Project. She brings a special brand of expertise to the issue, and so Natasha, please.
Thank you, Scott. I'm here from the Kenya Legal Project. I'm an attorney. The Kenya Legal Project is based at the Center for Animal Law Studies at Lewis and Clark Law School. And to echo what Mr. Shepardson said, Oregon is a place that values the environment, values conservation, and values animals. Lewis and Clark Law School is home to the Center for Animal Law Studies, the only animal law program in the country with as robust of classes that we offer, and it supports the Kenya Legal Project that I'm a director of. We have been in Kenya for the last 2 years, traveling back and forth. In that capacity, I've worked closely with judges and prosecutors, and I've asked them, what can we do in the United States? What can we do in Oregon to help your efforts locally to save your rhino and elephant populations? The message from them has been clear, that we need to stand with them. We need to enact our own ban of selling ivory and rhino horn. And with this Senate Bill 913, that's what this bill does. We as Oregonians are taking a stand, are taking a part in this global crisis and standing in solidarity with those in Kenya, those in Africa, working daily on the ground to save these animals. I'm happy to answer any questions further after we hear from everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. I'd now like to introduce George Okulich from the Oregon Humane Society, not to be confused with the Humane Society of the United States. George, please.
Thank you, Scott. Established in 1868, the Oregon Humane Society is the state's largest and oldest animal welfare organization with over 50,000 supporters statewide. And we wanted to start by thanking both Senator Haas as well as the Humane Society of the United States for bringing this bill forward. In 2013, the Oregon legislature declared that animals are capable of experiencing pain, stress, and fear, and should be cared for in ways that minimize pain, stress, fear, and suffering. This bold proclamation is not followed by a qualification that certain species are exempt or that it does not include animals that are located outside of Oregon. It stands alone in ORS 167.305, embodying the reverence Oregonians have for animals. There is information ad nauseum about the pain and suffering endured by ivory-bearing animals when poachers engage in the brutal process of removing their horns and tusks. And Senate Bill 913 should pass for that reason alone. But the need to curb the ivory industry extends even beyond the pain and suffering we staunchly oppose. Less than a month ago, the U.S. Department of Justice, Interior, and State acknowledged that the threat posed by wildlife trafficking to both conservation and national security, and released an implementation plan for the national strategy for combating wildlife trafficking. Organized crime has capitalized on this lucrative industry that is riddled with loopholes and enforcement shortcomings. Like almost all other offenses involving animals, wildlife tracking is linked to other black market crimes like drugs, human trafficking, and firearms. Each individual state should independently support the United States mission to end the illegal trade of ivory. Oregon's animals are fortunate to have citizens represented by the legislature that prioritize animal welfare, resulting in the state's position at the forefront of animal protection legislation. We have inspired neighboring states to strengthen their animal cruelty statutes and leading by example. In joining the growing force fighting the ivory trafficking industry, this bill enables us to protect animals on other continents and motivates other states to do the same. Any ivory crossing into Oregon represents pain, stress, fear, and suffering of the animal it originally belonged to, and for as long as an ivory products are welcomed into our towns and cities, that cruelty is perpetrated. Removing the demand in Oregon is a small, albeit an important step towards rendering these practices obsolete. We hope the legislature will move this bill forward. Thank you.
Thank you, George. And finally, Laura Dunn from the Animal Legal Defense Fund, their office up in Portland. Laura, please.
Thank you, Scott. And I will be brief. On behalf of the Animal Legal Defense Fund, a national nonprofit with one of its offices here in Portland, Oregon, as Scott mentioned, and its more than 200,000 members and supporters, we enthusiastically support SB 913, which is critically important to combating poaching and the resulting extinction of rhinos and elephants. No trinket is worth the life of a critically threatened species. Thank you.
Thank you. I would also note that we are joined in this coalition by a group called Wild Aid, and unfortunately they were not able to have a representative here today, but they are also strongly in support of this bill and will be partnering with us in this coalition. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions or obviously any questions for any of the speakers today, if there are any.
Can you help us understand what is currently allowed under Oregon law, especially as it relates to federal law? I mean, aren't there federal laws on ivory? So what does a federal, I mean, what exactly would this stop?
It's similar to the bill that was passed in 2011 on shark finning. And you might recall that in 2011, we had federal policy banned the practice of shark finning, but there was nothing to stop the trade in shark fins at the state level. And so people who illegally engaged in shark finning could still sell legally their product once it landed on shore. It's a similar concept here. You've got federal law that restricts and regulates the import of these products and also the trade across state lines. But what this bill addresses and what other states are passing are measures to address the trade of these products within the states, so that you shut down, through a ban, you shut down the demand, and the cumulative effect, of course, is to reduce the global demand for these products. Natasha, do you want to, or David, do you want to add to that at all? Okay. Any other questions?
Can you clarify for me, I think I did hear it, but just whether other states have this legislation already, and B, whether bills similar to SB 913 are actively being considered in other states now?
Right. So New Jersey and New York have both passed bills similar to Senate Bill 913, and California, Hawaii, I know there's other states too.
California, Connecticut, Hawaii, Illinois, Iowa, Oklahoma, Virginia, and Washington.
So those are the states that are all considering measures similar to this.
In other states.
Yeah. And I just got my email with the quote from Wild Aid, so let me go ahead and read that. This is from David Crackey, international board member of Wild Aid. David is an attorney up in Portland. He states, demand for rhino horn and ivory is what is driving the terrible poaching epidemic that is threatening both rhinos and elephants with extinction. Oregon and all the states need to ban the possession, sale, and trade in rhino horn and ivory immediately to show that we are serious in reducing the demand for these animal parts. In 2011, we banned shark fin soup in Oregon. Now is the time to take the next step and ban rhino horn and ivory. End of quote. Any other questions?
So so you said federal law regulates the import. Is that the same as saying bans the import of ivory?
Right. So you've got like the CITES treaties and federal laws that ban bringing these products into the United States, motivated, primarily by wildlife conservation concerns. But of course, we know that these products are still being brought into the United States on the black market and then being legally traded once they arrive at the state level, and that's what we're trying to address.
Well, I mean, since we don't have native elephant population, I mean, wouldn't any ivory just be, on the face of it, a violation of federal law if it's here?
Right, but it's the act of bringing it that is the crime. The act, in other words, just possessing it is not necessarily illegal. This bill bans the possession with the intent to sell. So the other point I would make is that people who have, for example, antique ivory can still gift those products. They can still bequeath them as part of their estate plan. Again, what we're talking about here is the active buying and selling at the retail and wholesale level of these products. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much. We've got some handouts there at the table, and also my business card. Feel free to contact me, and if you want to speak with any of these individuals, I'll be happy to put you in touch with them. Thanks for coming.